So my name is Wasim and this is my presentation on television news. So a television news broadcast is made up of different things. So we have regional news, which is news that focuses on stories that happen in a certain town or city or a certain region. And this is news is shown like all over. If it's like major news, it is shown all over the country, but it's limited to the town or city and its surrounding areas that it took place in. We have national news, which again is shown all over the countries, and this news concerns us as a nation. So right now, if it's anything to do with Brexit, that would count as national news, or if they introduce or change any laws, that would also count as national news. And sometimes this is also broadcasted in other countries if it affects them or not. And then international news is news stories that are happening in other parts of the world that may or may not directly affect us. So, for example, whatever we're seeing on the news right now, it could be the stuff that's leading up to the events of like any war that we might get into, basically. It could potentially happen, so it might directly affect us or indirectly affect us. We have specialist sectors, so they talk about a specific part of news. It isn't really like breaking news like headlines or anything like that. So we have sports, where they cover recent sports scores, teams that have won, any changes to the league, business and entertainment. So again, it is news, but it's not something that would warrant a breaking news headline unless it's, again, really, really serious. And 24-hour coverage, this is basically the usual schedule of all news channels. So basically, they start their programming off, and throughout the day, they're repeating the information and they're also updating it as more information is found. So they're also going more in depth about it as the day goes along. Issue-led discussion, so this is when multiple anchors or reporters, usually on like a Good Morning show, there's an issue or topic that they like to talk about, and they pretty much debate about it, and they express their own views and opinions, and they try to relate to the other anchors who have maybe similar views or opinions. And then weather, so yeah, each news broadcast usually finishes off with weather across the country. It's shown on a green screen, which has graphics chroma keyed over it, all the relevant information such as which cities, degrees, weather, stuff like that. So yeah, I'm just going to show you a few examples.
Hello, a very good afternoon to you. The first chapter of our weather story this week is not a particularly exciting one. There'll be a lot of dry weather, often quite a lot of clouds, spells of sunshine as well. That's how it looks in Cardiff today. But after that mostly fine start to the week, the story gets a little bit juicier from midweek onwards. Some wet and windy weather, and then for the end of the week, it is going to turn much colder. And yes, some of us will see some snow. But the white colour on this chart is not snow, it is cloud. The satellite picture revealing quite a lot of cloud, particularly down towards the south, where it's producing some misty, murky, drizzly weather, which will be slowed.
So that's a typical example of what a weather forecast would look like. The presenter, I've noted, is pretty light-hearted. This might be because the contents of the news broadcast before might have been very serious, so it could be just to give a light-hearted side to it. But he was, kind of making like, not really jokes, but again, he had a very light-hearted approach to it. And this is a bit from Sky Sports News.
Let me tell you, news just into us this afternoon, and we are just hearing from Celtic that Brendan Rodgers has been appointed the new manager of Celtic. Now, we told you during the week, did we not, that Brendan Rodgers was being interviewed for the job, and of course majority shareholder Dermot Desmond over at the K Club in Ireland this week for the golf, he was telling us that sure, Brendan Rodgers, a very big name, but he was one of a number of people that they were talking to. We understand in the last few moments that Celtic have appointed Brendan Rodgers as the new manager of Celtic. I am hearing, Kate, it is a 12-month rolling contract. And of course, he's been out of football since he was sacked by Liverpool last October. And Brendan Rodgers has been waiting for his moment to come back into the game. And of course, now he has taken it. And you have to think, Kate, a big pool this afternoon, a huge pool for Brendan with Celtic.
So I don't know if you caught that, but when the broadcast started off, he had like some kind of device in his hand, and he got his glasses forward to sort of read the information. So that's just an example of how technology is used in a news studio. As you can see at the bottom, we have breaking news. So new news is actually added every time it's updated. We have the Premier League table at the time, showing the teams that are in the top 4 basically, just so everyone watching just can have a general understanding of where their favourite team is on the table. And this part here is again just updating on more news. And usually I think on the right hand side they have odds for betting, so for like horse racing and stuff like that. And this was broadcast on Bloomberg like 4 days ago.
About this thing in February in DC.
Well, we've had this program, 10,000 Small Businesses, for quite a while. We convene groups and subgroups. You know, we're in a couple of dozen cities and operating. And every once in a while, we convene people together to, again, catch up with the people who we've helped train, but also to bring them in and hear from them what are their problems, what are their opportunities, what are their challenges that they face. And we just started to do that, thinking, you know, we should do this on a bigger scale. So we're going to invite something like our 7th, we have almost 7,000 graduates of this program by now. We're going to invite them, we expect thousands to turn up. And we're going to have, over a couple of days, we're going to have seminars, breakout sessions. We're going to communicate to them what we think would be good information from them. We're going to listen to them about their concerns, whether it's regulatory, access to financing, other things. That'll be the first.
So that was just a minute from a broadcast from Bloomberg News. So they got a CEO of a company, and what it looks like from judging by the title, obviously it's a 14-minute video, but judging by the title, they basically have like a topic-led discussion, and it says here on small businesses, Bitcoin and taxes. So they've got a person who's relevant for the topic. He's a CEO of a company, and they just discuss those topics.
This is NBC 17 First News at 4 p.m.
Good afternoon, I'm Donna Ray.
And I'm Heidi Deja. There are waiting lists and tickets just to stand in line and get a chance to buy PlayStation 2. That is PlayStation 2, the hottest game to hit the market, and it arrives in the U.S. tomorrow. But some people are standing in line already trying to buy this toy. NBC 17's Larry Pickett is live in Raleigh with all the excitement. Larry?
Hey, Heidi, that's right. Tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. at Target, and along with other area consumer electronics stores, it will be packed with PlayStation 2 fans. And it's expected to be the biggest consumer launch in history. On Thursday, shoppers will line up to shop at Target when Sony releases its PlayStation 2 game console to the public. Tomorrow, the shelves will be full with accessories and games. And according to store manager Mary Edwards, consumers will shop at a first-come, first-served basis.
We're going to hand out tickets to the first 24 guests, and they can redeem those tickets at guest services for a PlayStation 2.
That's right, and as you heard, there are only...
So that was a news broadcast from back in 2000 when the PlayStation 2 was released. And the reporter, who was kind of like, not really an expert, but he was more knowledgeable on the topic than the presenters, which is why he was the one who went to a store to interview and get some more information. And he had a notepad, because I think it was obviously back in the day, they didn't really have the technology back then, but he had a notepad with all the relevant information and he did read from it. So it's really similar to how news broadcasts work today. So a news channel typically operates out of a studio. This is where the set is located, the desk where the anchor or the presenter sits at. This is where all the crew is, the camera operators, and all the equipment is here. broadcast vans are sent out. So this is when when they have interviews at the location where reporters go and they go to get more insider information. And so broadcast vans are used to feed the signal of the location to back to the studio. So this is seen when the presenters say that they're gonna cut to a reporter, and then they show a screen, and we'll see a reporter doing a piece to camera with a microphone, just giving more information. And there are journalists who are constantly researching news stories and reporting back, making sure that the presenters and the reporters are up to date with their information. So different news channels have different priorities. So BBC News would focus slightly more on politics, while ITV would focus slightly more on entertainment. There could be news channels dedicated to a specific topic. So for example, Bloomberg is purely business. They show information on company stocks and holdings and stuff like that. And there could be a channel on a certain type of news, but they might opt to show world news because they feel like it's relevant to everyone else, basically. So when there's a story going on, news channels will often interview local residents to get an opinion, and it's usually, most of the time, they try to get 2 or more interviews that have opposing opinions, so that the audience, whatever opinion they have, they can have someone to relate to, and they can relate to the news broadcast. In online articles, readers not only have the ability to share the post to their social media profiles and get comments from other people, but they can comment on the post itself and connect with people who share the same opinions as them. So breaking news is news that is serious to some extent and basically very new. And this depends. So like a really small story that happens in like one part of a town, it wouldn't really be counted as breaking news. Breaking news is, again, more serious, and the manner in which it appears depends on the seriousness of the story. So it's mainly shown after a very short ad break or upon the showing of another news program. So when the presenters come back to maybe update the audience on previously mentioned news stories, they could mention that there's breaking news, and they can feed new information to the audience. It could interrupt the viewing of television if the story is serious and is getting national or international coverage. So for example, when 9/11 happened, television was interrupted completely, and they were showing coverage of basically the first tower burning. And when the second plane hit the other tower, they actually got that live on television, because again, they were just repeating the information, updating it as it went along, and basically trying to find more information and details as time went on. So most news channels have a similar schedule to each other, where morning news stories are shown from 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. This is to cater to those who usually be up at that time, so maybe if someone's going to work or school, and it's just to target them, just to update them. And afternoon broadcasts usually include updates on previously mentioned stories, and again, news stories that are going on. And some news channels contain ad breaks, whilst others don't. The ones that do have ad breaks, is important for them to have the right kind of ads, because children could be watching the news channels at any time, so it's important that nobody gets offended. So it can be argued that all kinds of news is in the public's interest, because it's good to know what's going on. So for example, I have the news app on my iPhone, and that app, even though it's not television news, but it basically asks you your interests. So I chose technology, gaming, and film and cinema, and I get these news stories. But despite that, I just recently found a BBC or a story saying that there was an assassination attempt on Theresa May that was foiled, and someone was planning to assassinate her at 10 Downing Street, and that might or might not affect me directly, but I found it good to know. It was relevant information to me, basically, and I don't mind seeing news like that on my app. And yeah, regional news is in the interest of people living in the area, because it's taking place in where they live, so they might want to keep them updated on their residential area. So the BBC is funded through the TV licensing fees, which is paid by households in the UK. This means that ads are kept to a bare minimum. If there are any ads, they're BBC related, so later programs and stuff like that. And they're not permitted to carry advertisements or sponsorships on the public services. So the channel is uninterrupted and it has an impact on the overall runtime. ITV, however, is funded by advertisements from third-party companies who pay ITV for the chance to advertise their products or their services on their channel, and this increases the overall runtime. So that information there about the BBC can be found on the official website. They will tell you that. Compared to ITV, if you try searching for advertising, they'll tell you that advertising is very welcome, and in fact they even have these rates. If you want to advertise with them, they have these numbers. So there's different regions here and the different times during the day. So the most one can pay for advertising on ITV is £60,000 if they want to advertise for every region. So BBC holds left of centre bias, meaning they're more likely to cover left-wing policy proposals rather than right-wing, whereas ITV News is the opposite. According to a survey conducted by the mediablog.co.uk, Sky News displays the strongest political bias over any other news broadcaster in the UK. News bias affects the way in which information is basically outputted. Simply by the way someone's saying it could influence the audience's feelings and how they want to feel and how they want to react to the news. The BBC has motorised camera systems. This means that camera operators aren't really needed, and it's more efficient on set, there's more space, and cameras can be handled in a way that a human operator couldn't handle it. News channels might also opt to utilise drones to get in places where it might not be safe, or humans aren't really allowed, or a film crew can't really get through. Drones will really come in handy to get an insider view of what's going on in a certain situation. News channels also include smartphone footage. This again is more effective than a film crew showing up afterwards to film an aftermath of a scene. Rather than that, you're getting a live view of what happened as it was happening and how it would have felt like to be there if that was you. So it's more relatable for the audience. So in the modern day, instead of a traditional laptop setup, news anchors could have tablets or iPads, and that's where they read information from. This means that reading from a screen isn't really subtle. So for example, when we watched that PlayStation 2 news broadcast, the anchor was kept on looking down at his notepad, and it was really obvious that he was kept on looking at it. This is more subtle, that they're reading off of the screen, and there's no laptop screen to cover the anchor's face as they're presenting information to you. And some news channels even use teleprompters to feed the script to news anchors. This is basically a device, it's very close to a camera, and it has the script that a news anchor is supposed to read. This is the most subtle way to read a script, basically, because it's right next to the camera lens, and you can't tell that someone's reading from another source. Lastly, news channels have utilised 4K UHD content to increase quality and keep up with the latest standards. And in recent years, some news channels have opted to use 4G internet to broadcast footage to their studios. So I just have a little clip.
The scenes at BBC Breakfast with Louise
So as you
Minchin
can
and
see,
Bill
this is a
Townwoman,
360
a
video.
whole host of other people here in the studio.
So many of them. We want to show you what it's
And
really
as you see,
like
this
here.
is the set around here, so the audience would have seen more than this, basically. If you go further up, they have the studio lighting. And as you see, these are the teleprompters that I
So
was
we've got
talking
just
about.
one camera
Right
here
next to the
in the
lens.
middle of the studio, which is your viewpoint.
And yeah,
If
this
you're
is
in
the
the middle
whole
of it all
set,
with us. So
basically,
take a
and
look
all the
around.
producers
You
and,
should be able to see
relevant people
camera
here on the
rigging,
set.
the light.
Any questions?